Alito, so excited to welcome you to our global press conference for Marvel Echo. My name is Seth Fairchild, and I am the Executive Director of Culture for the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I'm located right now in Durant, Oklahoma, in the heart of the Choctaw Nation, in our Choctaw Noah Aya, or the Choctaw Cultural Center. So excited to be moderating today's press conference, and I'm joined by some of the absolutely amazing talent that has worked on this project. That includes Alaqua Cox, Maya Lopez, Vincent D'Onofrio, Wilson Fisk, Devery Jacobs as Bonnie, Chaske Spencer as Henry, Sydney Freeland, director and executive producer, and Brad Winderbaum, executive producer and head of streaming television and animation at Marvel Studios. At a later portion in this conference, we'll be opening up the floor for audience questions. So be sure to use that Q&A chat function in your Zoom to ask your questions, and please include your name, the name of your outlet, your market if you're an international journalist, and who your question is directed towards. So we don't have a ton of time today, so I want to jump right into it and would love to first start with the star of the show, Alaqua. So we get to know and see a lot more about Maya Lopez in Echo. We learn about her past, her family, where she comes from, her roots. Can you share a little bit about your character and how you brought her to life?
Absolutely. So Maya is a deaf Indigenous person who has a biological family and a adopted family. And she's trying to reconnect with her family after finding out that her adopted family, her uncle specifically, betrayed her. So she went back to reconnect with her biological family and try to rediscover a more complicated and deep life that she did live and rediscover family. So I'm hoping that she can learn and we can all learn how she rediscovered family.
Yeah, it's such a special story, and I'm curious. I got to be around you a little bit on set, but really after seeing the first couple episodes right here at a screening at Choctaw Nation, I'm curious to know how you see yourself as being alike or different from the character.
Well, we're similar. I was raised with some trauma. We both have childhood trauma, of course, that we're raised with, and it was different, of course. For example, I grew up, as you know, I am an amputee. So I went through many different kinds of surgeries as a child. And so that made me a warrior in a sense. And Maya, she had the death of her mother and all these tragic events that happened in her life. So we both have different traumatic experiences. So it kind of makes us very similar in a way because we're both warriors and we're tough and we're badass. And I believe that's how we're the same.
Yeah, it was incredible. I know watching some of the action scenes, just so impressed. And the tone of this is gritty, and it's dark, but you were so impressive through all the action scenes. Uh, how did you prepare for that? What did you go through? Was there physical training, lots of working with the stunt team? What did that look like for you?
Luckily, I grew up playing different kinds of sports as well. Plus, I do have an older brother who helped me become more of an athlete because he's very much an athletic person. We're about a year and a half apart, so we wrestled growing up. So that toughened me up. And then when I did get the role, I had a stunt training team. About 5 days a week, I would go to the training, and it was a lot. I learned so much as well because growing up in sports, there wasn't a lot of stunts specific thing in sports, but so stunt training was a whole new world to me. And I was able to learn choreography, jabs, fights, and those specific moves. And that was so fun and very challenging as well, but that was the greatest part of the project. So it was a fun journey for me.
And I would love to ask a question for Vincent, obviously playing Kingpin, and something about Wilson Fisk. He just will not go away, and people absolutely love him for it, and everybody's such a big fan. Why do you think, or what is it about that character that's so compelling?
Uh, Well, thanks for that. I think that it's originally in the comic books he was also compelling, I think. And I've just been lucky to get the opportunity beginning with the Netflix show with really good writing to bring him forward in, I guess, a kind of new way, but just my version of what they did in the original comics. And then now in Echo, it's more good writing, and without the writing, I can't really do much other than show up. And so the writing is there, and it gives me the opportunity to bring the character forward. I think with Echo is the first time since the Netflix show when I've actually felt like we brought Fisk into Maya's story, but in a way that Fisk is I think best portrayed. It's very similar to the way it was in the original series, and that's very exciting for me always, because it has a more grittier feel to it, and it's in a more emotional story with me and Alaqua's character Maya. And I think that's that kind of tone is the proper way for where my character, I believe, lives best.
The writing was so incredible, and I think the thing that stood out to me and to the audience was this sort of father-daughter dynamic that's kind of gone wrong. And you and Alaqua play that so well, and it's so compelling every single time the two of you are on screen together. There's something magical that happens. Maybe talk about what that was like working with her through the process.
Well, she's just so impressive. I mean, it was really, I would like to say, well, my technique, this and that and whatever, but the truth is she's so present, and what can I say? The girl knows what she's doing. I was impressed every day, and it was amazing. Obviously the writing has a lot to do with it. The story that Alaqua and I were trying to service as the characters, that has a lot to do with it. But in the end, it comes to the day when the camera's rolling, and she was just always there in every capacity. And I was able to react off her, and I guess her off of me. And, we're very fortunate, or I felt like we were very fortunate to be able to portray these characters as a father-daughter or niece-nephew, however you want to say it, kind of relationship. Whereas we're bringing forward this kind of intensity in their just normal relationship that might have some trepidation in it, like real life, like people deal with every day. But then you add this kind of iconic Marvel part of it, which is good and evil, and just a combination of those two things. It just plays so good because it's all grounded in real emotions, yet you have these dynamic characters in the situation as well. So it's just a really clever idea, and the really right way, I think, for my character to be brought forward in this kind of storytelling. So it just worked. But it takes talent, and it takes guts, and the girl carried the show like a pro, man. You just can't. There's nothing you can say really, other than she's just extremely impressive.
I love that, and I think you're exact. Something about it just works, and so really neat to see that. For Chaske, you being from Oklahoma, hearing about this opportunity and the script and everything, maybe just talk a little bit about, when you first learned about the show and what it would encompass and what it felt like to join such a dynamic cast.
First of all, I was very honored to work with everyone, all the cast, the crew, everyone. I knew I was going to be in something special. I think I got a call. I don't remember how it went, but they had told me about the project, and they were interested in me, and was jumped at the chance, and I wanted to work with everyone. And I got to say, you know, to piggyback off Vincent, working with Alaqua, it's phenomenal. You know, that she was, again, present and right there. And I think the audience and people who see this when it's released are going to be very impressed with her. You know, I really learned a lot from working with her, and that's what I love about this job. You get to work with some interesting people, talented people, and at the end of the day, you create something special and you give it to the audience. And I think they're going to be very, very happy with the result.
I think so. So the character Henry, maybe tell us a little bit about him and what that was like playing him.
I had a fun time playing him. You know, I always looked at him as a touchstone, a go-between between Maya's past and her present and where she is. And I thought he was basically a witness to this. And everything when Maya comes into Henry's world, you know, he has no control over anything. So it was nice to play a character that's trying to play catch up with Maya a lot. And I enjoyed working with that. You know, I really like Uncle Henry. I think he's just a regular guy thrown into a very unique situation.
Yeah, he really brought something special to the story. It was incredible to watch you on screen. And next up for Devery, Bonnie, in some ways, your character maybe reveals what Maya's life would have been like had she stayed in Oklahoma. So maybe talk a little bit about that dynamic between you and her and what that story maybe meant to you when you first started reading that.
Yeah, I think obviously getting to be involved in this project has been incredible, and I think that leading up to playing Bonnie was we really wanted to make sure that it felt real between myself and Alaqua, that we had that history fueled between us, and we did a lot of work beforehand to make sure that that history could be felt. Also, before going to Atlanta to shooting Echo, I had a chance to stop in, as we were saying before and chatting before this, that I got to stop in at the Choctaw Cultural Center in Durant, which was so beautiful. And there was a piece towards the very end, and I am kicking myself that I can't remember the artist's name, but there was a piece that was about these two cousins. There's an older cousin and a younger cousin, and through Echo, the relationship between Maya and Bonnie is, even though they're cousins, it's almost like they're sisters. And so it was that piece before heading out to Georgia to shoot that I realized, like, oh, this is it was really inspiring to me. And I remember like texting the image to Alaqua and was like, oh my God, this feels like this is our characters. And yeah, just really making sure that we were able to root it in that relationship between them was really the key. And I think through the series of Echo that we're able to uncover Maya in her journey of figuring out what family means to her, and Bonnie being part of that, of exactly what you said, that glimpse of who Maya might have been had she not been pulled away to New York.
Yeah, that theme of family that you're speaking about just kind of, not only was that seen throughout the series, but just in Indian country, family and community is so important. Maybe talk a little bit about that thread as it played out in your role throughout the series.
Yeah, I mean, I love how it's like sister cousins and then also like uncle dads, and it's just like, I think that's so true in Indian country, that it's just like I call my aunties except they're actually technically my cousins. Like, I think that there's just like such a blend, and through Echo, the fact that it's an ensemble cast filled with Indigenous folks, and that there is such a sense of family in the whole arc and through the whole series of Echo, I think just lends to how authentic our storytelling is in it, that we had so many community members, because in so many of our cultures, it's not just about you being an individual, it's you being a collective of your nation. When we introduce ourselves, it's like, I'm Ganyagahaga, I'm from the Mohawk Nation. So when it comes to Echo and seeing that like Maya is one of many Choctaw community members, I think that just fills me with so much sense of pride and makes it feel that much more real. And that's kind of some of the textures and flavors we get when we're able to tell stories from our own communities.
I love that. I love that. And that kind of takes me to my next question with Sydney. Sydney, feels like it was about 2 years ago where we sat in this very building. You and Stephen Paul Judd came and presented an idea to us, and maybe share a little bit about your experience with that, and maybe how that vision played out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think, for just for myself, representation was, it wasn't something that was it was always something that was a necessity, and so, but I think one of the things that was important for us was being able to engage with the Choctaw Nation very early on. And I remember we came presented to you all at the Choctaw Center, and really for myself there was two things. One was to ask permission, was to ask permission from the Choctaw Nation to be portrayed, because I feel like a lot of times what happens with Native and Indigenous stories is that people come in and they say, we're going to tell you what the story we're going to tell. And we wanted to take a different approach, and we wanted to engage you. And so the second part was like, can we create a dialogue? We want to hear, we want to be as authentic in our portrayal of the Choctaw language, the Choctaw culture, the Choctaw experience as we can. And that came from the Choctaw Nation. Like I think a lot of times people tend to jumble all Native American tribes and cultures into this one big kind of monolith, and that's not the case. Every tribe is different, every language is different, every culture has its own unique specificities. And so I'm Navajo, and we're telling a Choctaw story. So for me, it was an absolute necessity that we engage the Choctaw Nation to tell that story.
No, and you did such a authentic job. And for those, our elders and youth that have viewed it, they've all said the same thing, how respectful the series was, and it tells an absolutely beautiful story. And a big part of that story is Maya's past. And maybe talk a little bit about her past and some of those things that we learn about her ancestors and those pieces.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting aspects about the character is the fact that she's a villain in Hawkeye, right? But then within that, once you start sort of pulling at that thread, then you look at where she comes from, right? And you look at, oh, this is a deaf Indigenous amputee girl from Oklahoma. How the hell does she end up being one of the top ranking lieutenants in Kingpin's army? And answering those questions was such an exciting place to be. And then answering the question, well, what is that like when she goes back home? And I think for, just for myself and, being Indigenous, being American, it was such a fun and exciting place to be. And then once you layer on the Choctaw, the Choctaw cultural specifics onto that, it gave us a chance to tell a really fun story. I think one example of that is actually in the second episode of our series. We have a scene that I think I can honestly say has never been seen on film before. And we get a chance to visit pre-European contact America. And that whole scene and sequence came as a direct result of working with the Choctaw Nation.
And that I love that. And I cannot wait for people to see the series. And honestly, those people that grew up in Oklahoma or Indian country, there will be so many things that they recognize throughout the series that aren't even main focal points, but the effort to tell an authentic story was from top to bottom. And just want to say Yako Key for that. And that kind of takes me to Brad. Marvel Studio films are now kind of exploring many different genres. Each one can have its own title, its own tone, its own style. And I think Echo kind of has its own feel to it. So how would you, in your words, maybe how would you characterize Echo, and what is it that makes it so unique from other offerings?
Well, I think Marvel is at its best when the storytellers follow the character and let the character kind of lead the dance, lead the journey. And we knew as soon as we cast Alaqua and Hawkeye and saw what she did on screen in that show, that she would be an incredible character to follow into her journey. And we didn't, Echo is a more adult show. It's our first TVMA show, but we didn't set out to make a TVMA show. We set out to make a Maya Lopez show. And this is a character who has a violent past, who's dealt with some real trauma, who has really difficult decisions to make. And ultimately has to, you know, confront people she loves in order to grow and change. And in following this character, it created the tone. It created a grittier, more grounded story for the audience that just so happened to be more adult, more TVMA, but it really was always born from Maya as a character.
Yeah, I love that. It was such an amazing story. And maybe if I can ask you a question, maybe on high level, you take a series like this that is maybe a little bit different from things that Marvel has offered in the past. So maybe how does this place Marvel, or what is the vision for Marvel Studios within the entertainment world moving forward?
That's a great question. You know, Marvel is such a big, you know, vast universe. You know, the comics have been called like the greatest ongoing story that's ever been written, certainly the longest. And there are so many corners to the universe that are still unexplored even today. Maya allowed us to see a corner of the MCU that hadn't been seen before. And to me, that is the future of Marvel. It is being able to tell stories that are unexpected, that operate on the fringe of what we've seen before, and are standalone, character focused, and have a unique personality all their own.
Yeah, I love that. That's exciting. That's going to be an exciting future. And I want to take some questions from the audience now. I want to start with Brandy McDonald from the Oklahoma for Alaqua, Devery, and Chaske. So we're seeing more movies and series like Echo that tell native stories, but also have indigenous creatives helping to steer the narrative. Do you think that makes a difference in storytelling, and do you think it's an important evolution for contemporary media? And maybe we could start with Alaqua.
Absolutely. I'm just so proud to be able to represent a platform that is uplifting voices for Indigenous people. And I'm just obviously so excited. I think it's so great that we have authentic people being picked for these roles, and we're able to show them on the screen in authentic representation. And we're doing it the right way. That's what I think is the most important.
That's so important. Devery, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, to borrow from the disabled community and a saying that they have coined, they say nothing about us without us. And I think that's so true for any marginalized community, including Indigenous folks. And I think when it comes to telling our stories, making sure that there are as many storytellers from that community as possible is paramount. And there's been 100 years of lack of representation and misrepresentation and an intentional exclusion of Indigenous voices in Hollywood. So I think to have us be a part of these conversations is integral to making sure that we're able to accurately tell our stories. And then aside from that, to be able to just be free to tell human stories and tell stories from our perspectives.
Chaske?
Yeah, it's, you know, I thought it's extremely important. You know, it wasn't that long ago when I was a struggling actor in New York City, you know, it was hard to land an Indigenous role that was written very well, actually. And, you know, I had to pay my dues doing some roles that weren't all that great, you know, and to see people behind the camera is really extremely important because that's where the control is. And they can write stories for Indigenous actors and talented young thespians up and coming. And I gotta say, I've seen more Indigenous actors now more than ever. And I hate to say it, but I've been around a while, man. So, you know, it does, you know, it makes me really proud to see that. And I always thought that the power is behind the camera, and the stories that the Indigenous writers write is more authentic and it's more believable. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and what relates to is emotion. If you can relate to that emotion, and we all of us can relate to that. So, you know, there's still a long road to go, but right now it's a real phenomenal time for indigenous film, because there's a lot of talented out there, and they're being seen.
Well, and we're so thankful to you and the others for kind of helping to lead that way and inspiring young people. And you know what you said about being behind the camera, I think kind of leads into the next question for Sydney. We have Molly Given from the Metro Philadelphia, AM Metro New York, says, I love this show because I feel like it brings back the quintessential Marvel tone of being dark, gritty, and unapologetic. From a director's standpoint, what tone were you trying to set for Echo?
No, that's a great question. You know, I think everything stems from story, right? So what is the character? Where are they coming from? Where are they going? What is the emotion? And so in our case, we have Maya Lopez, who is in Hawkeye, she's introduced as a villain. And, and that was really our jumping off point. And you have Maya Lopez, you have Wilson Fisk, and you have this whole sort of New York criminal underworld as jumping off point. And so, in the conversations early on, it was always talked about like, hey, this is actually very interesting. And the fact that she is a villain. And so the goal was never to try to turn her into like Captain America, right? It was always in the conversations with Marvel, the response was like, hey, let's lean into that. Let's see if we can push that envelope. Let's see how far we can go down down that rabbit hole. And so really the tone and the visual style came from the story and the circumstances of the character.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of villains, Vincent, I have a great question from Marta Zoe Peretti from the Dissimilar in Italy. She asked, how would you describe the evolution of your villain Kingpin over the years? And do you think of him as pure evil, or did you find something deep down in him that maybe humanized him?
That's a good question. Every time I play this character, it's been for a different storyline. I think that no matter what character that I'm playing, and I think most actors think this way, that even if I'm playing Fisk over and over again, my first job is to service the story. And so there was the Netflix version, and then there was the Hawkeye version. In Hawkeye, I was servicing the story that was written. And in Echo, it's the same thing. I mean, my personal tastes are different than, because we all have different personal tastes, but in the end, my job is to service the story. And so I had the opportunity, I have an opportunity to evolve all the time, evolve backwards, forward, whichever way the story takes me. It's my favorite thing to do. And I'm lucky to be able to make a living doing it. I think with Echo, it was just, I could have never expected to be in a show like Echo, just because of everything that all of you have been talking about, because of the whole ancestral part of the show that Maya's character brings you to, or that her ancestors bring us to through Maya. And like, that's something I could have never expected that my character would be involved in. And I have to say that there's a built-in fan base that they're so excited about things, and so it inspires you to deliver. A lot of people ask me, do you get nervous over the fan base expecting so much from you? And it doesn't make me nervous at all. It just inspires me to do a good job. And so there's that. And then, every once in a while, it doesn't happen a lot in a person's career. And young actors learn this in time, like I did. Every once in a while, you'll merge with a production where you just go into it wanting to please everybody. Like Sidney Freeman had a lot to do with that when it comes to my performance in the show. The script pleased you. I wanted to please her as a director. She has this quality where you just want to do the right thing for the lady. You just do. She's just awesome, and you just want to do the right thing for her. And she's got this great way of directing that seems it's so subtle and so powerful at the same time. It's pretty amazing. And that kind of thing doesn't always happen in one's career. I know the other actors on this in this conference here will agree with me that there's a couple of things about this show that were really special. One of them was the fact that Sydney was the director, one of the directors, and had and executive producers, and then there was the fact that, I'm sorry, but I have to say it. There's the woman, the DP was a woman, the writer was a woman, the directors were women, the lead is a woman. It's one of the smoothest shows that I was ever on in my life. I've never, like, it was run so well. There was never a kink in the day. Nobody ever bumped against anything. Not while I was there anyway. It was one of the smoothest productions. I told this first thing I said to my kids when I got home. I go, that was one of the smoothest productions I've ever been on. It was amazing. And that doesn't always happen. But so you never, to answer the question, you never know which way you're going to evolve. You can go back, forward. It depends on where the script takes you.
I love that. Well, it was so compelling. Again, can't wait for audiences to be able to see this portrayal. Last question, Goncalo Sá, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, from SAPO Mag in Portugal. This is for Brad. What sets this series apart from other MCU adaptations so far?
Well, in a way, Echo marks a new beginning for the studio. It's a new tone for us, and it is a truly grounded and emotional journey, not just for the audience, but certainly for all of us who are lucky to be behind the scenes. I have to say that, you know, through Sydney's leadership on the production, we had a real, you know, to quote Devery, a real sense of community making this show. It was a nurturing, collaborative experience, and frankly, one of the best of my career.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. This went by so quickly, but I want to say a special Yakoki Fina Hoke, which means thank you so much to Alaqua, Vincent, Devery, Chaske, Sydney, Brad, for this conversation and for all that you did on this project and to bring the Choctaw culture to the world and on a scale that otherwise would not have been possible. Cannot wait for people to see this and want to encourage everybody to check this out. It debuts on Disney Plus and Hulu Wednesday, January 10th, with all episodes launching at once. Thank you so much, and can't wait to visit soon.
Yakoki and Yawa.
Thank you, Seth.
Thanks, Seth.